The conversation around gun control often focuses on bans, but there's another quieter method that's been just as effective: pricing people out.
You price people out.
You see, machine guns in the US aren't outright banned, but for the average American, they might as well be. And it all started with the Hughes Amendment in 1986. This law didn't prohibit machine guns. Instead, it froze the civilian supply. And the result? A legal market where pre-1986 machine guns now cost upwards of $50,000, accessible only to those with deep, deep pockets. The Indiana Appeals Court recently reinforced this, confirming that while the Second Amendment protects gun ownership, it doesn't necessarily apply to machine guns the way many assume. But here's the thing. The way the media covers stories like this matters, because depending on which outlet you're looking at, you might not even know this ruling happened. That's why I use Ground News. Unlike your typical news app that just spoon feeds you whatever biased headline they want, Ground News actually shows you how different sources are covering the same story, so you can see the bias in real time. For example, their blind spot feature literally lets you see what stories are being ignored by both the left and the right. So if one side refuses to cover a major event, like let's say an Indiana court ruling that contradicts gun control talking points, you'll know. And with their bias distribution tool, you can see whether an article leans left, right, or center. So you're not just blindly swallowing whatever narrative the media wants to push. The best part? Their Google Chrome extension lets you instantly compare headlines across different sources while you're browsing the web. So next time you see a news story, you can check if it's being spun differently somewhere else. Kind of like when two people tell the same story and then one story sounds completely different from the other story. You get what I'm getting at. But don't take my word for it. Go to ground.news/Colion to subscribe. If you use my link, you'll get 40% off the Vantage subscription, which gives you unlimited access to all of these features. By subscribing, you're getting a better way to read the news, and you're also supporting my work directly. Again, that's ground.news/Colion. Click the link in the description section, subscribe, and start seeing both sides of the news. Now, before we get to the Hughes Amendment, we have to go back even further to the National Firearms Act, NFA, of 1934. This was the first major federal law to place restrictions on machine guns, and its origins are important to understand. The 1930s were defined by high-profile crime, with gangsters like Al Capone, John Dillinger, and Bonnie and Clyde making headlines. These criminals weren't just robbing banks. They were using fully automatic weapons like the Thompson submachine gun, the Tommy gun, which had become widely available after World War I. The government, eager to crack down on organized crime, decided to target the tools they use rather than focusing solely on law enforcement efforts. The NFA didn't ban machine guns outright. Instead, it placed a $200 tax on every transfer of a machine gun, an astronomical amount at the time, roughly equivalent to over $4,000 today. This tax was deliberately designed to make ownership prohibitively expensive for the average person. Additionally, the law required extensive paperwork, registration with the federal government, and fingerprinting for anyone purchasing such a weapon. These bureaucratic hurdles ensured that machine gun ownership would drop significantly. But here's the thing. This wasn't really about stopping crime. Criminals weren't buying machine guns legally to begin with. The restrictions primarily affected law-abiding citizens, while doing little to stop underground markets from being able to sell weapons to criminals. And just like that, machine guns started to become unusual. Not because people didn't want them, but because the government made sure fewer people could afford or legally obtain them. Fast forward to 1986, and the government doubled down. The Hughes Amendment wasn't passed after rigorous debate. It was slipped into the Firearm Owners Protection Act late at night under questionable circumstances with no recorded vote count.
Sneaky son of a bitch.
What it did was cut off civilian access to newly manufactured machine guns, limiting ownership to models already in existence before May 19, 1986. But here's the key point. Demand didn't disappear. It surged. And since supply was frozen, prices skyrocketed. Today, the cheapest legal machine guns cost more than many people make in a year. If the intent was safety, why not ban them outright? The answer is simple. It wasn't about safety. It It was about control. One argument that comes up in these discussions is the idea that machine guns are dangerous and unusual, and therefore subject to restriction. But what does that actually mean? The phrase comes from Supreme Court decisions that interpret the Second Amendment, most notably in United States v. Miller and District of Columbia v. Heller. The logic is that weapons that are both dangerous and unusual can be more heavily regulated. But historically, machine guns weren't considered unusual at all. In fact, prior to the National Firearms Act of 1934, civilians could buy them just like any other firearm. It wasn't until the 1934 law introduced taxation and registration requirements that ownership declined. And the Hughes Amendment in 1986 took it even further. One thing's for certain and two things are for sure. Politicians and tech giants don't want gun content to be recommended to you. And we're all fighting this culture war together. Now you can help do your part by liking, commenting, subscribing to the channel, but most importantly, sharing this video with at least one person. Together we can stop the suppression of our 2A rights. And don't forget to click the link in the description section of this video for the products that I mentioned in this video.